disasters that has occurred all around us. Another hurricane hit Puerto Rico, was it yesterday or the day before? Basically devastated the whole island, left the entire island without power. And they're saying it could take weeks and even months for them to have power back. And you also heard of the earthquake, 7.1 magnitude, that took place in Mexico. 2 huge earthquakes within a matter of 2 weeks that destroyed dozens of buildings, and as a result, many hundreds of lives were taken away. And people are still trying to get back on their feet and rebuild in Texas, in Louisiana, in Florida. I met a gentleman who was about to retire in a couple of months, and he was sharing with me how once he retires in the end of October, I think it was, or November, that he's planning to go to Texas or Florida for a few months to help people rebuild. Because he's been involved in construction all his life, so he figures he could be helpful to some people who are devastated and trying to rebuild. And because of what's been happening in this country as well as in Mexico and the Caribbean islands, people are pulling together. People are coming together to help in various different means. There is a family who in Puerto Rico who has no electricity whatsoever, who are living under a small lamp, and people are huddled together in an evacuation center, a couple hundred people, and there was a couple of women who were cooking for these people, and they were asking how they're going to cope with the devastation they just experienced, and they were saying, well, we're still thankful because we have our life. You've heard often that possession could be replaced, but human lives cannot be replaced. So these people, even in the midst of dire circumstances, they're grateful that they're still alive. They're grateful that they could rebuild again. So when disasters or terror attacks, whenever things that are really difficult to deal with happens to a group of people or to a nation for that matter, people always come together to help and support in any way they can. We have read a few verses in chapter 21 where it talks about how a family is joyous at the birth of a child. We have seen in chapter 21 verses 1 through 7 last week how at the birth of Isaac, which was promised by God to Abraham and Sarah 25 years ago, when he called them when Abraham was 75 and Sarah was 65, how God promised them that he'll make him into a great nation, make his name great, and that he'll bless him mightily. And we've seen how 25 years later, God's promise was fulfilled in the first part of chapter 21. And in verse 8 it says, the child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast, it says. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar, the Egyptian, had born to Abraham was mocking. And she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. In the midst of celebration, in the midst of joyous occasion, problem arises. Namely, that Sarah is not happy with how Ishmael is treating Isaac. And she comes to a conclusion that we have to get rid of Hagar and her son Ishmael in order to resolve the problem that she's faced with. Now let me ask you a question. How old is Ishmael at this time? You have to do a little calculation, right? How old was Abraham when Ishmael was born to him through Hagar? We're told that he was 86 years old. Okay? Now, Isaac was born when Abraham was 100 years old. So there is how many year difference between Ishmael and Isaac? There's 14-year difference. So when Isaac was born, Ishmael was already 14 years old. As it says in verse 8, when the child grew and was weaned. Child is weaned at the age of between 2 and 3, they said. So Isaac is between 2 and 3, and Ishmael, they'll make Ishmael between 16 and 17. And as Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast in the honor of Isaac and invited many guests. And in the midst of celebration, Sarah saw Hagar's son Ishmael mocking and bothering Isaac. Now you have to understand this from Ishmael's point of view as well. Now Ishmael is between 16 and 17. Until Isaac was born, when he was 14, he was the only son of Abraham. Meaning for the first 14 years of his life, he was the love of his father Abraham. Whatever he so desired, Abraham did for him. Along comes this little baby, Isaac, when he's 14 years old, and all the attention of his father is turned to Isaac. Now, as a parent, I know when you have more than one child, there is jealousy that arises, especially with the older one, especially when they're young. Now, think of it this way. Ishmael has been loved by Abraham for the first 14 years of his life. Everything he wanted, Abraham did for him. If he wanted to spend time with his father playing sports, Abraham was there. If he wanted something, his father Abraham would get it for him. But once Isaac was born into their family, he realized, he began to see that Abraham is not spending as much time with him. Abraham is not paying much attention to Ishmael's needs because he is so overjoyed at the birth of his son Isaac. So you could very easily understand that Ishmael will be jealous of all the attention that Isaac is receiving. So you could understand why Ishmael will be bothering Isaac. This probably wasn't the first occurrence. But perhaps this marks the point where Sarah had it enough, because Ishmael's been bothering and mocking her young son for quite some time. So Sarah decides that we have to get rid of Ishmael and her mother Hagar. So in verse 10, and she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that slave woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. Now, in those times, if the parents had 2 sons, all the sons will get 2/3 of the inheritance, and the younger one will receive 1/3. So in the mind of Sarah, she's thinking now, not only Ishmael bothering my son, but if he continues to live in my house, when time comes, he will receive 2/3 of all that we possess. So she said, we got to get rid of them in order to keep all our possessions, in order to give everything that we possess to my son Isaac. So she comes to Abraham and tells him that we must get rid of them. But you have to understand, Ishmael is Abraham's son as well. So in verse 11, the matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. Now Sarah and Abraham has a different perspective, different view of Ishmael. Sarah may not like Ishmael, but Abraham loved Ishmael because he is his son as well. So when Sarah came and suggested that they get rid of Hagar and Ishmael, it distressed Abraham greatly. But God comes to rescue in verse 12. But God said to him, do not be so distressed about the boy and your maidservant. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I'll make the son of the maidservant into a nation also, because he is your offspring. So God intervenes and reassures Abraham that God will take care of his other son Ishmael. God, realizing that Abraham was distressed and concerned greatly about Ishmael's situation, God intervenes and tells Abraham not to be distressed about the boy or the maidservant. And God tells Abraham to listen to Sarah's suggestion. God tells Abraham to send them away. And as he says that, he promises that he will make the son of the maidservant, that God will make Ishmael into a great nation as well, because he is your offspring also. So Abraham is able to come to a decision following morning. So in verse 14, early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. Now, it could not have been an easy decision for Abraham. Even with God's intervention, even with God's reassurance, it could not have been an easy decision at all. Perhaps Abraham stayed up all night, agonizing at the reality that he has to send Ishmael and Hagar away for good. And yet trusting what God has said, trusting what God has promised him about his son Ishmael, that he'll watch over him, that he will be with him, that he will make him into a great nation as well, Abraham was able to send Ishmael and Hagar away. And as Ishmael and Hagar wanders off, probably most likely headed back to Egypt, and they were wandering in the desert of Beersheba at the end of verse 14. Now verse 15 says, when the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a bowshot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And as she sat there nearby, she began to sob. Now, if you're wandering in the wilderness, if you're wandering in the desert, if you run out of water, that means it is a certain death within a matter of days. Now, remember when I went on a short-term mission trip some time ago, there was from church, I think it was number 4, we were walking into the mountains. And as we were walking into these, deeper into the mountains to visit churches that are established deep in the mountains, one day we had to walk for about 7.5 hours. And it was during summer, it was hot and humid, and everyone had to carry at least 2 2-liter bottles. And after worship in the morning, we started, I think, around 9 o'clock. And we arrived at the church, I think it was around, 5 o'clock or so. Basically, we walked all day up in the mountains in a hot and humid day. So we told all the members not to drink all the waters too quickly. Because you have to, because it's a long walk for one thing. And you have to carry your own belongings, clothes and the sleeping bags and all that stuff. So it was going to be tough to carry too much water. So every member had to carry 2-liter bottles each. And we told every one of them, conserve your water, because we have long ways to walk. And there's always few people who will drink everything before the halfway mark. And when we got to the middle of our walk to the church, around 1 o'clock, there was 3 members who ran out of water. And there's no way you could walk in these high elevation in a hot and humid day without any water. So basically we have to divvy up the water that people were conserving for themselves. And basically give half bottle of water to people who already drank everything. And as you're walking, continue to walk to the church, and some people run out. And we'll ask the Mexican brothers, how much longer we got to walk? And every single one of them said, it's just around the corner. And they've been saying that for 3 hours. It's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. Just around the corner turned out to around 8 hours of walk. So we know the importance of water. And when finally some of the members finally ran out of water, they started drinking any water that they could find on the way to the church, which is dangerous. So, running out of water as they are wandering in the desert of Beersheba, Hagar knew exactly what it meant. Hagar knew in the matter of a few days that her son, who is between 16 and 17 years old, will die. Not only her son, but she too will die very soon if they don't come and if they don't find any water to drink. So leaving her son, Ishmael, she walks off into, goes shut away, it says, and she begins to sob. Once again, God comes to rescue in verse 17. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. As God came to intervene in the life of Abraham, God came to intervene in the life of Hagar and Ishmael as well. As God promised Abraham to not be distressed over what was about to happen, and as God promised Abraham that God will make Ishmael, Abraham's other son, into a great nation, that's what God does exactly, coming to Hagar to tell her that God will watch over that boy, that God has heard the crying of Ishmael. And God has sent an angel to Hagar to reassure her that God will make Ishmael into a great nation. Not only will God help him and save him in this dire circumstance, but God will make him into a great nation as well. And God opens the eyes of Hagar, and she's able to find a well of water. And so she fills the skin with water and gave the boy a drink, and she begins to live under the protection of God. As it says in verse 21, God was with the boy as he grew up. God is God of orphans. God is God of widows and widowers. God is God of those who are weak, those who have no one else to help. God is God who cares for the destitute. God is God who watches over and fulfills the promises that He makes to His people. And we're told that he grows up under the watchful eye and protection of God. And he becomes an archer, it says. And he grows up and is married in verse 21. And ultimately, Ishmael becomes a great nation as well, as God promises. When there is a problem, it is God who intervenes in the lives of His chosen people. When Hagar and Ishmael is about at the threshold of death, and as they're sobbing in the presence of God, God intervenes to help and provide their need. And as so many people all throughout the world, especially those who have gone through 2 major earthquakes, especially those who have gone through 2 major hurricanes, as they are suffering, it is our responsibility to pray for them, intercede on their behalf, that God may pour His grace upon the lives of so many people who are suffering and struggling. And even in our lives, when we are faced with the challenges, when we are struggling with issues that surrounds us, we need to look to our Heavenly Father. We need to look to our Heavenly Father to give us wisdom, give us strength to stand back up again, to give us the strength to overcome the obstacles that we're facing. And as God helped Abraham and Sarah's situation, as God helped Hagar and Ishmael's situation, we must trust and believe that God is able to help with our situations as well. It doesn't matter how bleak it looks. It doesn't matter how difficult the circumstance, the situation may be. We must trust and believe that God is able. God is God who is able to do anything and everything, because He is God Almighty who created everything that we see. Because He is our Father who loves us so much that He was willing to sacrifice His one and only Son to purchase each and every one of us, to give us a gift of salvation. So we need to look to our Heavenly Father to give us wisdom, to give us strength, to live this day for the glory of God.